Thank you everyone for joining and welcome to this webinar from Transparity. To start with a little bit of housekeeping, everyone should be on mute. If you can stay on mute for us until the questions at the end, that would be great. Feel free to ping questions in the chat as we're going through this session, but we will look to leave at least 10 minutes at the end for any questions and a Q&A there. Again, if you can just stay on mute for us, that'd be great. I'll start by introducing myself. So I am Anthony Cook. I'm the Practice Group Director for the Azure practice here at Transparity. So I lead a team of engineers, consultants, architects, very much focused on Azure infrastructure foundations, which is what today's all about. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of overlap there with things like AI, data. But yeah, that's really the area that I focus on. If you don't know anything about Transparity, very quick overview. We are UK's most accredited Microsoft MSP. We're 100% focused on Microsoft technologies. So we use Microsoft technologies to deliver transformational projects, and we've been doing that since 2015. I've been here for 6 years as of last week. Alongside the Azure practice, we have other practices within the business that align to those Microsoft technologies: modern workplace, cybersecurity, data and AI, app development, and business applications as well. We have, I'm not going to list them all because we could do a webinar on that, but 7 solution partner designations. We were Partner of the Year last year for non-profit, and we're really proud as well to be one of the first as a frontier partner, which is obviously quite relevant today. This webinar will cover foundations, but it's about getting AI and your AI projects to production, really getting the benefits and the business outcomes that you're looking for. And that's really what today is all about. I'm now really proud to say that I'm going to pass over to Lindsay Trainer from Microsoft, who will introduce herself and start this session off. So yeah, thank you, Lindsay.
Hi everyone, love to see everybody. I'm Lindsay Trainer, so I'm a Senior Cloud and AI Platform Specialist at Microsoft, and I'm delighted to be here presenting alongside Transparity, because this is exactly the conversation that we need to be having with companies like yourself. So yeah, I just kind of want to start with a bit of a provocation. So the way that we see it is that most AI projects don't fail because the model isn't clever enough. They fail because the company isn't ready for the model to operate safely, reliably, and at scale. AI has moved on from experimentation. I think we've all kind of realized that now. And the question isn't, can we create an impressive proof of concept? The question is, can we put AI into real workflows with real enterprise data and with the right governance, the right security, resilience, and cost controls as well? And I feel like that's what separates an AI demo from a frontier firm. So I guess my message today is simple: no foundation, no frontier. But if you do get your foundations right, AI becomes far more than a productivity tool. It becomes that kind of new operating layer for the business to be able to leverage. So just moving on to the next slide. This is the shift that I want customers to really feel. So weak foundations keep AI trapped in isolated experiments, but strong foundations, they're able to unlock scale across the business. So like we've all seen brilliant demos, a model that's able to summarize a document, maybe generates content, answers a question, or drafts a response. And that is exciting, but it's definitely not the end game. The real opportunity is when AI can reason over trusted enterprise data and actually really understand the business context, follow the right permissions, and be able to interact with the systems safely, and actually help people to move much faster in the flow of work at the same time. So that requires technology, process, and people to be able to come together. So just over the next kind of 10 to 12 minutes, I'm going to give you a kind of a practical lens for where to start and why the action you take now probably determines how fast you're going to be able to move a little bit later. So just on to the next slide. So this is kind of a useful way to kind of diagnose readiness. It's to kind of ask, like, where are we on this journey, and be honest. So on the left, the data is siloed, quality is inconsistent, and AI is kind of mostly individual pilots. And then kind of when you look at the middle, organizations start building common platforms, things like data lakes, landing zones, and early AI operating patterns. And then when you move further right, the platform becomes production capable. So pipelines are reliable, AI workloads can be deployed and monitored, and data can be shared through common models. So the frontier stage is not just about having better models, it's enterprise-wide infrastructure where AI is embedded into the processes, connected to operational systems, and kind of continuously optimized through the business. So the kind of the four enablers at the bottom, these are the ones that I'd really encourage every customer on this call to assess honestly. So data readiness and quality, scalable AI infrastructure, a clear buy, extend, build decision model, and then optimization and resiliency. And like, to be honest, if any of these are weak, AI momentum will eventually slow down. And that is kind of the harsh reality. So I guess this is kind of why data foundations are not a back office issue, I would say. Senior leaders increasingly understand that AI adoption is constrained by data infrastructure, not model capability alone. So if the data is incomplete, or if it's duplicated, if it's poorly governed, or even just difficult to access, AI either fails to deliver value, or it actually creates risk faster than it can create benefit. So I guess the powerful kind of phrase here is grounded on, like, AI needs grounding in enterprise knowledge, in business context, in policies, operational data, and then also trusted definitions. So I guess for customers, the opportunity is very, very exciting. Stronger data infrastructure absolutely means faster AI adoption. So, even better user trust, and be able to have more ambitious use cases. But it also means the work kind of has to start now. You can't wait till every single AI idea is ready and then discover the data estate isn't actually able to support it at a later point. So I guess once the foundation is in motion, the data foundation, the next question is around the infrastructure. So, you need to be able to ask yourself, are we creating a platform-led architecture, or is every AI project inventing its own stack as we go along? I guess fragmented AI stacks create inconsistent security, like duplicated integration, unpredictable cost, and like a much harder path to production. Agentic AI also changes the infrastructure pattern as well. So we need like vector stores, orchestration, memory eventing, even things like API action execution, model routing, monitoring, and of course governance. So I guess the principle is to make these capabilities available as like a standard platform service. So the teams are going to be able to innovate very, very quickly without bypassing enterprise controls. And that's how you create speed and safety, but at the same time in harmony. So kind of just moving on then to AI kind of landing zones. So I guess this is kind of how we make that kind of make it practical in Azure. So it brings together identity, network, kind of topology, resource organization, governance, operations baseline, business continuity, and then kind of deployment patterns as well. I guess in plain English, it gives AI teams a secure runway rather than asking them to build a runway while also flying the plane at the same time. So for leaders, the value is in confidence, I guess. So teams can deploy much faster because the guardrails are already there. You've got your security, your compliance, and your operations teams that can support scale because the workloads are following known patterns. And then we've got partners like Transparity who can accelerate with proven architecture and the automation rather than starting from a completely blank page. So production AI management kind of disciplines, when we're thinking about that, we should definitely think beyond model deployment and include endpoint management, cost management, data management, business continuity, and operational monitoring as well. Like AI systems can drift, prompts can change behavior, data can shift. We all know that model updates can alter outputs, even usage can grow faster and unexpected, and then costs can become less predictable. So I guess that's why Gen AI ops matters. It's the discipline of being able to monitor the quality, the safety, the latency, cost, and reliability over time. And frontier firms treat AI as a living system. That's the way you need to think about it. They benchmark, they evaluate, they monitor, and they improve continuously because the business process increasingly depends on the AI staying accurate, and it needs to be trustworthy, and it also needs to be fully available. And that's just so important. So I guess this is the operating model shift, I would say. Like IT can't just be a reactive technology gatekeeper. And when we think about frontier firms, technology teams become consultative partners who help business leaders identify where agents can actually drive strategic outcomes and then jointly build those capabilities safely. So that means the data and the platform conversation has to be connected to business strategy. So like which processes are actually worth transforming, which data sets are critical, which actions can agents take, and under what controls. And I think the winning companies are not just going to be the ones with the most experiments. It'll be the ones with the best route from experiment to governed execution. So I wanted to make this kind of visible because I feel like customer examples kind of land better than just talking about theory. So a strong UK proof point is NatWest, which has like a publicly discussed working with Microsoft as part of its AI-powered kind of bank-wide transformation. So, you can read up more about this yourselves, but I guess the reason this example matters is not just that a major UK organization is investing in AI, it's that in a highly regulated, high-trust environment, AI can't be treated as a set of disconnected experiments. It has to connect to secure platforms, trusted and governed data, and then identity and responsible AI controls, and of course have a clear operating model. And I think that's the message for every customer on this call. You don't need to be a bank to face the same pattern. If AI is going to touch customers, employees, decisions, or operations, then the foundations are going to be what makes it safe and allow you to scale. So like the bigger the ambition, the more important the foundation actually becomes. And that's a message I want you to take forward. So kind of just summarizing, and this is my last slide, I just kind of want to close on with kind of 4 practical actions. So the first would be to assess your maturity and do it honestly. Where are your data infrastructure and operating model gaps? The second one would be like prioritize a small number of high value AI use cases and be able to identify the critical data elements that they depend on. And then the third would be build the platform patterns. Once kind of govern data access, AI landing zones, integration, monitoring, and then your Gen AI ops that I mentioned. So that every new use case is going to get like faster and it's going to get safer. And then the fourth one would be to, make sure that you partner to accelerate. So, with Microsoft and hopefully with Transparity, you alongside your internal teams can actually turn this from an abstract ambition into a concrete roadmap moving forward. So I guess the takeaway is simple, kind of from me. It's no foundation, no frontier, kind of what I said at the beginning. But this should really feel energizing. Not daunting. The companies that are able to act now are going to be the ones who are going to be ready to move from isolated pilots to AI that changes how we get work done every day. And the frontier era is coming very, very quickly. So I guess the question is whether your data is going to be ready to meet it right now. So that's how I want to close, and I just want to say thank you. Thanks very much for your time, and I'm going to pass it back over to you, Ant.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. Lindsay did a great overview there, and there's going to be a slight bit of overlap into what I covered now, but really what I'm going to go through in the next 20, maybe 30 minutes or so is to double click on some of those areas that Lindsay's just touched on, specifically around that kind of AI infrastructure. And I want to be honest here, that our slides aren't just regurgitating what Microsoft is saying, right? We're presenting what we see from our customers, and Lindsay presents very similar points. So this is not this is stuff that we're seeing. Microsoft are seeing this. We are seeing this with our customers as well. So thank you for that, Lindsay. And we'll start with just to get a bit of an idea, really, kind of in the room, a bit of a poll. So hopefully a poll should be popping up any moment. And yeah, we'd like to start with a poll first of all before I go into my section. There it is. So I'll just give everyone a minute to complete the poll. So maybe you are using AI, possibly mostly Copilot, some 365 Copilot, using it in Word, Excel, things like that, or some off-the-shelf kind of AI solutions. You may have started kind of building in things like Foundry, Studio, for example. You may have even gone all the way up to more kind of custom third-party AI builds, local models, things like that. Or you may still be exploring. Yeah, great if you could complete the poll. I don't know if we've had enough come through there to see the results. Asking my team. Or if we have any results, if you could pop them in the chat. Oh yeah, I can see them. So, okay, kind of what's expected, really. Mostly around 60% of you kind of in that first bucket, which is what I expected. With Copilot, yes, there's an additional cost, but there's some availability there in some of the current SKUs. So it's kind of an expectation. It's what we see. And there's a few experimenting with AI as well, or investigating some use cases, but nothing live in production yet, which obviously is perfect. Today's session, really what we're talking about. Yeah, kind of what we expected there. Yeah, and someone's mentioned about being a greenfield startup looking to build this in from day one, which is the perfect position to be in from day one. So no, that's great. I'll just close. Okay. So I think what I want to touch on first really is to make a point before we go into talking about the foundations, that there are different ways to consume AI above and beyond, to be honest, what's on this slide or in the rest of this webinar. As you can imagine, it essentially changes daily. But the point I want to make here is that it doesn't really matter how you're consuming it. The foundations are essentially the same. You may be consuming AI. So 365 Copilot is an obvious example of that. You may be building AI, Foundry, a little bit of Studio possibly, but you're building AI, or there's that custom. And we've just seen from the poll really where everyone in this kind of webinar sits. But the foundations are the same. The depth of them may change. Depending where you are on this screen will open up more control for you, the control plane for you. But wherever you sit, this is the map, essentially. And there is that one shared foundation, and that's what this session is about. And that's what I'm going to double click into, be more technical, but not too technical, hopefully. But yeah, that's very much what this session is about. So regardless of where you are, and we know over 50% of you are in that first bucket, it doesn't matter. This is still important. The foundations are still the same. Lindsay touched on this bit perfectly, actually, and this is something that we're very much seeing, although my transitions aren't coming through. Here we go. Doesn't feel too long ago that we were all blown away with the early models that were coming out, right? The things that these models can do. And to be honest, we're still very, very much at that point today. You know, the models are changing daily, whether it's from Anthropic, whether it's from OpenAI, they have different uses. That's not really the conversation anymore, at least not for enterprise. The conversation now is, okay, those models can do some cool stuff. But are we running it safely? Can it scale? That's really kind of what we're now seeing. And Lindsay touched on that perfectly right at the start of her presentation. And this is the inflection point. This is where we're moving away from AI can do clever things. It will continue to do so, and more around, are we operationally ready? Because value does not come from using one of these new models straight out of the box. It's not guaranteed value, guaranteed technical kind of, you know, improvements and things like that from these models, but values differently. Being able to apply them in the right place with the right controls and the right operating model, again, something Lindsay touched on, that's what's going to be far more important moving forward. Consistent business value, responsible adoption, repeatability, scalable foundations. That's the bit that we need to start thinking about to make sure that we can move these solutions so they deliver value in production and don't just remain a POC, a chatbot, something like that kind of sat there. This isn't just our opinion. We've already had one opinion from Microsoft, from Lindsay. We had a Frontier event in June. Some of you actually may have attended that. If so, good to see you again. But over 50% of the respondents to the survey that we did post that event stated that foundations were now their priority. I don't know, that's because I did a good job at that event and scared everyone, or if it's just because they knew that, and Microsoft's very much been talking about that, but over 50%. And any of you that were involved or viewed any of the sessions at Build, it was very much around this as well, right? You know, AI alone won't change your business, the system running it will. There were breakout sessions in there around foundations. So again, it's not just what we're seeing. This is very much what Microsoft and others are seeing as well. So let's delve a little deeper into kind of why. Why are we seeing pilots stall or struggle and see the real business value? The first one we're seeing is inconsistent architectures. Lindsay touched on AI landing zones, and I'll do the same shortly, but every pilot's built differently in its own sandbox network, not connected to anything else, not governed the same way as hopefully your other workloads are, hopefully, but very inconsistent. You know, businesses may have started 3 or 4 different proof of concepts. They probably all live in different places with different owners. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but the inconsistent architectures that we see on almost a daily basis from customer to customer is very much happening. Governance, huge one when it comes to AI. You know, it's not working just because you watched it do what you wanted it to do. What is it doing that you can't see? What about the things that you can't control or you should be controlling? Again, that's often something that people don't think about, especially when doing POCs, because they see proof of concepts as this isolated environment. Therefore, there's less risk. But there is, soon as you want to move to production. And the reason when someone noted in the comments that they were very much greenfield and looking to start out, it's so much easier if you do this from the get-go, because then actually moving from POCs, and I don't mean this just from AI, we do proof of concepts with businesses on whether it's migrations, whether it's virtual desktops, whether it's app development. If you get the foundations right at the beginning, that move to production is actually really easy, he says. But there's a lot less risk if you've built it for production in the first place. Yes, there's trade-offs, cost, time, things like that, but there's certain things here that don't cost more and don't add that much time to add some simple kind of governance, for example. Identities and at least an identity model. Agents are not people, but they should be treated like one. They shouldn't be sharing identities. You need an identity model. You need a way of tracking what AI is doing. You can't govern correctly. You can't monitor. You can't ensure security is correct. You can't do that over specific identities. Agents, for example, authenticating as a shared secret is not ideal. You can't break down the problems. You can't break down the security barriers from one POC to another, for example. One area that we hear a lot about in the AI space, frontier space, cost surprises. It could be cheap at 5 users, but not so much at 10,000. This shouldn't technically be something you get caught out with, really, with correct planning. If you know you're looking to scale something into production to a certain number of users, you should be able to predict that cost. I'm not going to lie and say that it's always super clear and the cost models today are going to be the same in 6 months, but they are what they are when you go to plan. Cost surprises is a big one, and I'm going to go in detail later on in this session on how we can kind of track that a little better. Data, where is the data? Where's the data going? We could do another webinar specifically on data. Lindsay touched on it perfectly. It's super important when it comes to AI solutions in general. But yeah, data residency, anything like that is really important. It's not always thought about. If the data's not in a good place, it will also be a struggle to production. And that's the point I probably want to make here, that this is not one problem. Foundations not done correctly, you will struggle to see value. Data is just the same. The data quality is just as important. And finally, capacity, GPU limits, quotas in regions, something we're seeing at the moment with some of our customers. You know, the uptake and usage of some of these models in specific regions, you know, you can get capacity problems. Again, that needs to be thought about early, planned for right at the beginning. And again, something that I'll touch on. So, you know, if you run a pilot, or anyone on this session that's run a webinar before, you've probably hit at least 2 of these problems. Definitely one of them. So there's one workload that I'm going to speak about in a second, or one technology, one lens to look through all this at, which exposes essentially all of these problems in one go. And when we went from first using kind of, yes, Copilot chatbots, and then we started moving to new technologies, it started to bring these problems up to the surface quite considerably. But before we move on, the last one worked perfectly, but we'll have a poll pop up, hopefully. You know, there may not be loads of you on the call that have done proof of concepts, but you know, any type of these issues that you may have faced before, ideally specific around AI workloads, but foundations are foundations. You could argue that most of these on the screen are applicable to any type of technical builds or projects that you may have. Costs up there, all of the above, 42%, 3 people mentioned all of the above. And again, this is a conversation we've had with customers where you won't say AI at all. Customers that are looking to expand, migrate further workloads into Azure, app development in Azure. These are all things that landing zones or some of the technical solutions that I'll speak about in a moment aim to resolve. But yeah, so 55% say that they've seen all of the above. So I don't think you can get much clearer than that in terms of those problems and the problems people are facing. So the workload that breaks the foundation, I'm looking at this through a lens of a specific workload, in this case agents, and why when we moved and we started to use agents, as I'm sure a lot of you are doing, while this really pushed these problems to the kind of forefront. So why is this happening? Why are we seeing pilots stall or struggle? You know, it's usually agents. So What is an agent? I suppose I should start with first of all. At the start, it was a chatbot and it was answering your questions, right? But the way to look at an agent is anything that's taking actions, anything that can go and look into your system, into your data, fill a form, send an email, kick off a workflow, but something that can complete a task for you. And you can already see when I'm describing that where problems may be, it's reading data for you, it's taking actions for you. This is very different to a chatbot, which obviously what we're seeing a lot of right at the start. Again, you're probably already running one. I've asked this question already once, but you're using Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, you're essentially using one. It's got agentic mode. An example may be a legal agent handling contract reviews, a sales agent pulling kind of intelligence. We see a lot of that, and Microsoft have some out of the box agents there as well for some of that stuff around like sales, for example. You may have built one, you may have used Studio, you may have created an operations agent that spots an issue, updates a system in a updates a record, sorry, in a database, files a ticket, notifies people. I'm back. Sorry about that, everyone. I don't know, I assume it was my internet. Lindsay, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me? Thank you very much. I'll carry on. I'm not sure where I dropped off there, but yeah, you're using agents if you're using Copilot. You're building agents if you're using things like Copilot Studio, something pets at home have done. And you may be using kind of the professional grade, professional kind of development platform where you're very much creating one or using a partner such as ourselves to do the same thing. But the point is, you're probably already using an agent, and there are options as well for governing them. Get something I'll touch on. So the point we want to make is that the chatbot kind of POC, and not just a chatbot, but kind of a lot of the POCs, especially the ones in the early days, they were kind of hiding some of these problems, if anything. A chatbot would answer a question when it asks, it runs in demo. If something was configured incorrectly, you probably didn't see it. The cracks would be hidden. It's forgiving. An agent in production is the opposite. It's running continuously. It acts on its own. It reaches into your systems. Every weakness of that foundation will show up at this point. This is what scares people. It adds risk, and risk, fair to say, is one of the big reasons why businesses don't move into production. Cost being another reason, if I'm being honest. But the best way to look at agents is they're not the shiny capability thing you can send off and do jobs for you. They are, but they're very much, when you start using them, a stress test for your digital estate, stress of security, governance, and everything around that. We have an image here, kind of shows that perfectly, really. It'll stay hidden. Identity problems, cost, governance, networking, it all stays hidden until you start to use agents. Doing work for you, taking actions for you, then you'll start to see them. So, okay, Lindsay's kind of scared everyone. I've kind of scared everyone. How do we build the platform that agents can't break? How do we build that foundation so you can get that business value? That's the bit now to go over. So we've got some pillars here. Would argue there's more than this, but the AI ready foundation, and again, this is applicable to a lot of kind of digital technical workloads, but identity first of all, I mentioned it earlier on, it needs a principal. It needs its own identity. It cannot be shared. Networking. You don't want connections going over the internet. You may have an AI agent that can go into your CRM system to look at records there. How's it accessing that CRM system? Is it doing that over the public internet? Is it doing that over private endpoints? Is a firewall protection involved there? You have multi-sites, virtual WANs. There's a lot that goes into networking that, again, at production, you can get these solutions running. And again, it feels like it's doing what it should do. But all of that could be traveling across the public internet. And again, you may not even notice it if the output's the same, but it's important from a security standpoint. Governance and security, of course, you control not just what an agent can read, but what it does. This is not just about giving it an identity and saying, right, this is your access, but what can it actually do? It might be able to raise a support ticket for you, for example, but it shouldn't be able to make changes on your behalf unless you want it to. And that's the kind of differences there, the way you should govern these type of workloads and agents. Observability. Every action should really be traced end to end. Why has something changed? How do we roll that back? This is all the way down to levels of prompts, usage, everything, not just from a security standpoint, but monitoring what's going off there is really, really important. You shouldn't see these models as just some black box that you give words to it and it spits them back out at you. There are ways to monitor down at very detailed levels, especially using some of the Microsoft technologies. Capacity I've touched on, and it's a big one. I don't just mean capacity in regions, but GPU capacity, PTU capacity. It's important before you start in your AI kind of project that you understand what you need from a capacity standpoint and you get that reserved. What you don't want to do is spend a few weeks, maybe months planning, building parks. You go to move to production and the capacity is not there. Plan ahead. FinOps, I'll touch on in more detail, but we've moved away, or we are still very much there, sorry, in terms of how much is the infrastructure costing on a monthly basis. There's added layers of cost, of course, when you start to consume some of these models. Yes, some of the costs are included in things like licensing or E7 licensing, Copilot licensing, but there are certain functionality you use that's consumption based. Foundry is largely consumption based on tokens. So how can you actually do FinOps over that? And finally, something I'll go into in detail in a second, but where is it living? Where does the data reside? This is important, of course. It's not just from a kind of latency problem, but a governance problem. And also, what are the models you're using? Some of these models are based in different countries. It's not don't just look at this from a lens of where am I running my workloads, but where are the workloads that I'm accessing, all the technologies, the APIs I'm accessing, where do they live, for example? It's often something that pops up when people want to use Anthropic models. So to go into a little bit of detail in a few of those, to give some more kind of technical detail and some of the functionality you can do. So from identity, humans, we are great. Passwords, multi-factor authentication, passkeys, we're used to that, right? It's a slow life cycle. You should have policies that force you to change passwords on a certain basis, but it's a fairly slow life cycle when it comes to humans. I've been here at Transparity for 6 years. My account's been living for 6 years. I do change my password though. Workloads, they're often given things called service principals that they're a lot longer kind of lived, stable. The owner, you may use them to onboard other applications. They're probably going to live for years at a time. Agents are very different. They're short-lived. They could do thousands of things a day. You could have thousands of agents. I believe at Transparity, we are, if not there already, as a business, have likely more agents than we do people now. So there's a lot of them. And when you onboard people into your business, I assume there's a full-on process to do that. It should be the same for agents. So one of the technologies that you can use, it went GA in April this year, but Entra Agent ID. So this enables you to kind of give it access in a specific way. You have to have a named person for each agent. So each agent's got a human sponsor. There's that kind of accountability there to someone else in the business. There's life cycles where access expires when you know it's not needed anymore. Orphaned agents can be removed. This is very much Microsoft seeing the problem that agents are a completely different thing we've dealt with before in terms of access. They're ensuring that it's governed, and I think one of the important ones here that it is that named sponsor. Someone in the business owns it, they're accountable for it. But Enter ID is something that can help when it comes to agents. In a way, treat them like people. But people are probably more predictable, so it could be a problem. So we'll go on to our third poll now. And thank you everyone, by the way, for getting involved in the polls. But yeah, if we can get the I think we've got one more after this, but pop a poll up, thank you. Keep an eye on the chat. It's never good when your network drops during a webinar. It makes it a lot more nervous, the next bit. Yeah, so all over the place a little bit there. 3 people have answered, 4 people now. Yeah, credentials, API keys, secret stored in config. And again, there's different uses for what we're seeing on the screen. Managed identities, shared secrets. There's different uses outside of AI for some of these. But yeah, interesting. Couple of you managed identities, 33% don't have agents. Again, great. Hopefully you want them eventually. But the foundation should be in a good place. So thank you for filling out that poll. I've got a few more slides. I want to go in into another area in a little bit more detail. I touched on it earlier, but something needs to be thought about, and it's foundational to if you've got other workloads running in Azure, and any AI system that's in production is going to probably, in a networking sense, route through some of that you've already got. But yeah, first of all, kind of private. You need to make sure everything that's moving around the data is private, whether that's to storage, to search, to databases, to key vaults. Public access should be switched off at all times. It's not always possible, but most of the time you should be able to do it. Keep retrieval and tool calls inside of a boundary. Networking is one way of creating a boundary. If you don't want them to access certain things or get out into the internet, networking is a good way of doing that. You can use firewalls with other systems, DNS, even APIM. So Azure API management as an AI gateway. You can look at token metering there, rate limiting. So there's different layers of networking. It's not just about creating that boundary and making it private. You can use different networking services to give you that kind of more of a view at a token layer as well. And my final kind of deep dive that I wanted to cover really, because it's important, is where does the enterprise, where is it running? Residency, operations, capacity, laws, latency are all things you need to think about when you're thinking about the location. Yes, laws should be the first one, but latency is often something that people don't think about when they're looking to kind of place these workloads. You've got public Azure regions, ideally choose a region closest to you, but you need capacity, or you may be running some of these services on Azure local, whether that's connected, so allowing it to be connected to the internet, or a fully disconnected version. But there are ways for you to run these systems within your own boundary. And there's other ways of doing that as well that I've not showed on this slide. You can use Foundry Local, things like that. So the rest of the foundations, just quickly, I touched on earlier on, but in terms of security and governance, there is something called Agent 365 that was generally available in May this year, so just after the Enter ID. This gives you a control plane above all of your agents in the business. It doesn't matter if they're living in any of the systems I've said today. That kind of Agent 365 can tell you how many agents are in your business, who owns them, how often they're being used. It allows you to create access scope across all of them at once. Security teams aren't just spotting agents popping up. You can have things like approval gates for creating agents. It's very much a way of onboarding them correctly, not like let's switch agent 365 on and then all of a sudden you notice you've got 400 agents in your business and shadow IT becomes a problem. There's purview things you can use around governance as well, DLP policies to block sensitive payloads going out and things like that. But Agent 365 is definitely something that I would recommend people looking into because that's very much going to be the control plane going forward to have that visibility across your agents. Very much the same for observability. Boundary will enable you to capture every LLM call if you want, every decision. You can look at live traffic. It can give you insights into, hold on a minute, you seem to be using more of this model than you did yesterday. But Foundry's got some built-in stuff there around kind of monitoring. And something I've touched on already, but people are getting caught out with this. We see it all the time. But capacity, whether it's the model, whether it's the GPUs, the PTUs, the databases you're going to be using, whatever that may be, everything is growing quickly. You're all aware of the investment, but depending on where you're looking to place your workloads, capacity can be a problem. So plan it at the start. And finally, FinOps. Some of this can be reserved. Some of this is pay as you go. I think what's important is that there are some systems within Microsoft or some of their solutions that allows you to view the costs, rate limiting, as I said earlier on, metering, budgets per user, something we do at Transparity, applying budgets to employees, specific budgets for roles that allow them to utilize some of these models so you can control the costs. You will hear a lot of scary stories out there, but the tools are there to control the costs if you need to. And I'll kind of end on this, really, well, not right at the end, but Lindsay touched on it at the beginning, and I'm going to loop back round to it. An AI landing zone, if I was paid based on the amount of times I say landing zone, it would be great. But AI landing zones is often the first place we start with customers, whether you're about to start on a POC or not. And that's not just technical. This answers the questions of things like how do we govern it? How's identity being dealt with? What are the networking? We have automated solutions that can rapidly deploy landing zones into environments to ensure private networking is in place, policies sit over the top, access is governed correctly, and it's very much a starting point. Now, this on the screen is a Microsoft example, but not everyone uses these type of technologies. Not everyone needs container apps, but there is a way to speed up the start of your projects, not just in AI, to be honest, using things like AI landing zones. And this is often something that we get involved in with our data teams and our AI teams when we're first speaking to customers. We understand things like operating models, what skill sets have you got in-house, because it's okay deploying this and then going, there you go, best of luck. But configuring those landing zones to your strengths, to your weaknesses, and dependent on the workload you're using. But it is a way of speeding up kind of starting to use AI. But with POCs, if not all of them, are not built like this. Oh, I dropped them, sorry. Most POCs are not built this way. They're not built in a way that you've got segmented networking, hybrid connectivity, policies over the top. Most of them are a lot simpler, and this really is where you need to try to get to. So where are you? I suppose is a question now. And where do you think you are on your kind of your road to production? You're experimenting. I imagine a lot of people are in the first two. Is it pilots, POCs, and things like that? We know a few of you have been doing that based on the polls. Are you scaling, or are you in production at this moment in time? Which I assume there won't be loads of people there, but should be our final poll popping up now, just to cover that off. Been on it with the polls, guys. mostly experimenting and piloting. So yeah, the first two, kind of what I expected. Hopefully this webinar will start to help people move closer towards that other end, which is scaling and production. But yeah, exactly as I expected. And thank you for your responses. So finally, just before we go into some questions quickly, how can we help at Transparity? We do readiness assessments. We can work with you to assess whether you've already got a pot or whether you're looking to start greenfield. And that assessment's not just technical. It looks at things like skilling and operating models. We can help you deploy those AI landing zones using code, repeatable, Foundry enablement via our data team, AI team. And we're just looking to help a lot of customers move that hard mile to production. And when I say production, I mean real value, because that's what we're trying to get in production. Microsoft have once again, a couple of weeks ago, completely renewed all of their funding pots, something we've been working through at Transparity, but there are more frontier AI-based funding pots now that Microsoft can offer. Some of the monetary value of those has increased significantly. Again, this is, if you're aware of funding pots up to 2 weeks ago, they have all now changed across the board. So that's something to be aware of. We can access that, not for all customers, but we can very much access it. So if you qualify, maybe worth reaching out to us, see if we can get some funding there. And support. We support these workloads too. Keep them observed, governed, cost controlled. But one of the things we do at Transparity is not just deliver those projects, but of course support and manage them. So yeah. I will keep it on this screen. We are now actually at Q&A, and I ran over a little bit, so apologies, guys. But I will leave this screen up and have a little chat. Yes, so someone's asked in the chat, is there an equivalent of the Power Platform COE for Microsoft AI? And Lindsay's answer there was, first of all, great question. The direct equivalent is Copilot Control System, which gives you security management and adoption controls for 365 Copilot and agents. And yeah, there are COE starter kits. Obviously, Power Platform's got a lot of overlap here. And I think it's probably fair, to be honest, and say that Microsoft are in a little bit of a transitional period, starting in April this year, where they're starting to consolidate some of these tools. So I can only see it getting simpler in terms of the governance. You know, Enter ID is giving that one way of giving access. I can only start to see Microsoft to simplify some of these tools so the governance can be done from one place, ideally. But yeah, are there any other questions? Anyone wants to ask in the chat or out loud if you want to? So I've left there's a bit of a quote there, which I think just fits perfectly. And I want to leave that there to show that, you know, partners do have the expertise, right? We've worked with multiple businesses. AI in terms of the technology is still fairly fresh, don't get me wrong, but you know, we've worked with a lot of customers. Microsoft have worked with a lot more. So don't kind of, you know, just work alone. Feel free to reach out to partners to assist. Where should we start if we're only using Copilot today? By Copilot, I assume at that point, what, 365 Copilot in the app. I think that's the one that surfaces the least, right? The less worries around kind of networking. I think what you need to be careful there is mostly around data, and also something we do a lot of, but user training. Because something that you'll see a lot, or something that we see a lot of, is the way people use Copilot is probably not the most efficient, especially early doors. The usage of Copilot 365, people throwing all sorts at it without really understanding what it can do and how it works. And I think you'll get a lot of efficiencies in your business if training, onboarding, and that type of enablement is done around Copilot, because it felt like this nice thing that popped up in the corner in people's apps. They were probably used to ChatGPT came before, right? They were used to asking those questions. But I see people underusing Copilot massively in terms of, if you're paying for it, one of the things I would look at is training, because it's underutilized. Yeah. Lindsay's also typing, so I'll let Lindsay possibly answer too. And apologies for the drop-offs on the network, guys. Absolutely typical. Good, perfect tap like there as well. You know, Lindsay's mentioned in the chat. Start with the foundations, not the fancy stuff. Switch on Copilot dashboard, and then drive 3 or 4 daily use cases. Nail those habits and extend them into agents. And that's something we did at Transparity in the year when Copilot was first released. Everyone's doing all sorts in there, and you're probably a lot of people doing the same thing. So share some of the use cases that you're using Copilot for, whether you're using it in Excel or Word. Share some of those experiences. You know, we run training around kind of prompting, prompts, authoring, stuff like that. But it's likely if you've got a big business and you've got a lot of Copilot licenses, there's a lot of people doing the same thing. And one person might be doing it really efficiently and another person not so much, and the outputs could be different. So I think, and again, this is something we can help with. You know, get those use cases down. The use case shouldn't be, can you rewrite this email more professional for me? There's far more valuable use cases that you can probably get out of the license you already paid for. But yeah, thanks for adding that on, Lindsay. That's perfect. Any other questions? No. Absolutely perfect timing then. Yeah, I've left the slide up. Once again, thank you so much, Lindsay, for attending. Amazing presentation. Really appreciate it. And the same to all of you that joined this session today. It will be recorded. I believe it will be put online at some point. And look out for some more AI frontier focus sessions coming up. This one was very much around the foundations. And we're always open to feedback, right? If you feel like you could have benefited from maybe a more technical webinar or demo, let us know. Yeah, we're always open to feedback. Yeah, but keep your eye open for more sessions coming up soon. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.